In professional sports, a franchise player is an athlete who is not simply the best player on their team, but one that the team can build their franchise around for the foreseeable future.
Welcome into a brand new edition of Franchise Players. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson. You can catch us every Friday afternoon live across the Triad, the Greensboro, Winston-Salem, High Point Market, TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. You can hear it at 5 p.m., as well as our home at WWBG 1470 AM in Guilford County. If you've missed it, you can always check us out on WTOB out in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County at 6 p.m. every Friday. For those that are new to the program, Franchise Players focuses on interviews with the top beat writers, authors, players, coaches around. And kicking off today's show, he is the author of Spies on the Sidelines, the high-stakes world of NFL espionage. Kevin Bryant joining the Franchise Players. Kev, what's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, Desmond. I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me back on.
So before I get into some questions with you, the book itself, Tobacco Road, we just launched a contest on Facebook for people to win a digital copy of your book. For those that want to win a copy of it for free, it's a simple contest. Go to Tobacco Road Sports Radio's Facebook page. The post pinned at the very top is a guess the number game. So you have to like the page, subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tobacco Road Sports Radio. There is a thread where basically we've picked a number between 1 and 600, and you have to go in and type in a number, and whoever picks closest between now and Friday, February the 17th, will win a copy of the digital download for Spies on the Sidelines. So you get to vote once a day. So everybody go over there and check that out. It's a great book, great read, especially if you're really into the NFL and behind the scenes. So, Kev, I want to talk a little bit about that with Super Bowl week here, Eagles and Chiefs getting ready to get after it on Sunday. Before we get into the dirt, though, what was the inspiration for you writing this book, and tell folks where they can actually go find it today?
Sure. So, the inspiration behind the book, I've got, 24 years of experience now collecting and protecting information for the Department of Defense, a master's degree in intelligence studies. So I was always very interested in anything that, deals with spying. And after Spygate, after Josh McDaniels and his staff got caught spying on a 49ers walkthrough practice while he was with the Broncos, I got very interested in just wanting to answer for myself how much spying goes on in professional football. So I started to research that topic and realized that there's a bunch of really great stories that are out there, but they're all over the place. And no one had ever written a book on the topic. And I thought, I've been looking to write a book for quite a while. And I think a lot of people would be interested in learning more about it. So I set off to write the book. Now you can find the book you can go to my website. It's spiesonthesidelines.com. That's got all the info you're going to want on, where can you get the book? What are, my social media handles, all the information that you want to know about it. If you want to see, other interviews or whatnot, I've got all the links there. So that's the easiest way to find all that info. But the book's out there anywhere you can buy a book online. It's, any of the major retailers, it's selling with them.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's usually the first place people are Amazon for pretty much everything now.
Right.
So yeah, definitely go get that. But like I said, if you want to win a free copy, a free digital download of it, go over to the Tobacco Road Sports Radio Facebook page right now. The pin page at the very top, we're doing the guess the number game. So you can go in, type a number in between 1 and 600 between now every day until Friday, February 17th. Whoever guesses closest to the number we've already pre-selected will win the digital download for Spies on the Sidelines. Kevin Bryant here with us, joining us on Franchise Players today, Super Bowl week. How were you able, Kev, to get people to actually reveal some of the items you wrote about in the book? Was there like a level of trust you needed to actually gain with some people, or were there people more willing to talk than you expected?
Yeah. So very, very difficult to get people to talk, right? First of all, the NFL is pretty hush hush to begin with, and you're dealing with a bunch of relatively rich, wealthy individuals, right? When it comes to players or coaches. So it's difficult. They value the privacy. No one wants to destroy anyone's reputation or legacy. And furthermore, all those members, they signed non-disclosure agreements, not to talk about all this type of stuff too. So it was very difficult. The interviews that I did, I was able to conduct, were conducted anonymously because of that. What I will say is that, a lot of times people were willing to give me, I don't know, 3/4 of a story, I'll say. It was like, hey, they talk, and then they'd hit that point where like, that's probably about all I should tell you. Okay, moving on. Yeah.
So, Kevin, football and, well, to me, in football and especially baseball, in my journeys, it feels like there's a segment that's always there that feels like they fully believe, quote unquote, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. So did you find out certain stories? Did finding out certain stories change your views on certain coaches or players or franchises as you started your research on this book?
Yes, definitely. So, I kind of started where I think the average NFL fans are probably now, which was like, okay, this is a Patriots thing, right? And but what I learned through the research was, the NFL has this very, very long and complicated history when it comes to opponents gathering information on one another. And the Patriots they're the flavor of the month. That's it. This type of activity has been going on forever. So I will say it made me look at things differently. So for instance, there's a lot of really great material I found on Al Davis, who's one of the biggest characters in the history of the NFL. And being a Broncos fan myself, I always despised Al Davis. But the more I learned about it and the more I read about him, the more I became to appreciate him and what he did, what he brought to the league, and just the character and the interesting stories that he brought. And so I thought, man, why do I feel that way about Al Davis, but not about Bill Belichick? And the conclusion I came to was because, you know what? Bill Belichick, we're in the heat of the moment. It's today. He's still coaching. He's that bad guy today. But I think as history goes on and time goes down the road, he's going to be viewed as just one of those, hey, that was an interesting character who, as opposed to being just a villain, which, he is a little, people will see him as something more than that as well, though.
That's good. Okay. So that's good. I could see that too, because the Patriots are kind of like the Death Star, or were the Death Star for like 20 years across the NFL, for all fan bases. So I could kind of see that sentiment being there. How hard is it to actually spy on opposing teams today as opposed to like 20 or 25 years ago? Because a lot of teams have like indoor facilities now. They have Spygate and stuff like that in their head. So I would think that they're taking extra measures to make sure that they're not being filmed or anything of that nature. Is it harder to spy on teams today as opposed to back then, or because of technology, is it easier?
Yes, that's a really good question. So it's just different. So, spying is continually evolving, just like with international espionage, right? As one team figures out what another one is doing, teams change. So if they feel like, hey, this team's spying on us, we need to do something different, we have to adjust. Or as technology evolves, that also changes things. So, for instance, the threat used to be of helicopters and airplanes flying overhead, maybe people taking pictures out of there. Whereas today you have the threat of drones. In the past, the threat was very much of having paper playbooks stolen. Now the threat is, how do we protect our digital playbooks? So it's always evolving. It's not that it's more or less of a threat. The threat is simply changes and adapts over time. And, that has gone on forever. And the threat of like a team spying on a practice, is that now removed because of indoor practices? Well, not at all. And I'll give you an example of that. 2002 Super Bowl, right? You've got the Patriots going up against the Rams. And they're both doing their walkthrough practice at the exact same facility where the Super Bowl is being held. The Rams go first, the Patriots go second. Well, the Patriots do their practice and then almost their entire staff leaves, but they leave a couple people behind who witnessed the entire Rams practice and how Marshall Faulk is going to be used in that game. And so when they're done, those staff members go back to the Patriots hotel debrief the Patriots staff on what they saw while there. And then, the defensive coordinator for the Patriots adjusts the game plan accordingly and is prepared to defend against Mike Marshall Faulk and all the different ways that he's going to be utilized for that game. And it made a huge impact, and the Patriots pulled off one of the bigger upsets in NFL history.
Yeah.
And that was a big aid for them. So you have to constantly, anytime you're not practicing in your home facility, which is, roughly half the time, you've got to be worried about all that stuff. And, the Dolphins found that out this year when they went to Ohio and practiced at a college there because they got kicked out basically because of the tornado and had to go practice for a few days out there in Cleveland. And, and then they've got a random, probably someone who went to the college there who ends up, filming their practice and putting it up on Twitter. So that threat, it hasn't gone anywhere. It's still very much alive.
Wow. And just you brought back memories of that Rams Patriots Super Bowl, because I was a Rams fan. I was a fan of the Greatest Show on Turf. And it felt like in that game, it did feel like that the Patriots kind of knew where the Rams are going to be a step ahead of where the Rams actually were. It was one of those Super Bowls, that one and Raiders Bucks 2000. When was that? 2003. No. When was that? The first Bucks Super Bowl. But that one was more John Gruden had just been there like the year prior and probably fluid plays. And for whatever reason, the Raiders never changed their playbook. So kind of similar in that vein. But mentioning the Patriots, though, it does feel like the Patriots are the ones that everyone kind of looks at as the innovators of today's spying on the sidelines. There's a story that in 2017, before the Super Bowl, the Eagles only talked about the Philly special, the double reverse that they did for the score right there before the half. They never practices it, though, out of fear that the Patriots would somehow get it on tape before the game. The Panthers have had players that have claimed that the Patriots taped their practices before Super Bowl 38, which is why they knew some of the signals and things of that sort. And the Panthers had to actually change up stuff mid-game. How much do the other teams in the league actually look at the New England Patriots as rule benders?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's a doubt in anybody's mind in NFL circles that the Patriots are rule benders. I mean, that's been out there for quite some time.
Let me rephrase the question then. From what you learned about the Patriots and how the teams view them, does it taint where you rank Tom Brady on the quarterback GOAT list or Bill Belichick on the greatest coaches list?
Yeah, really good question. So, that's difficult to answer. So what you're going to see is, what we see with Tom Brady now, right, that he's no longer with the Patriots. The Patriots are struggling, right? Bill Belichick's magic it's dried up, right? And so everybody goes, well, can he do it without Brady? Was it all because of having a great quarterback? And how much did any of that spying stuff really matter? Because it looks like the magic was Brady, which is valid. That's a very valid point and argument. What I will say is that spying is what, we in the military call a force multiplier. Meaning, if you've got two guys fighting against 20, well, those two guys are going to have a bad day, right? But being able to get additional things and assistance helps them out and is a force multiplier. So can you get them good intelligence? Can you get them good comms? Can you get them good weapons and assistance and logistics and everything that comes with it, right? Because that can help give an edge to those people that are down there in the fight. And I think it's the same thing on a football field, right? A vastly inferior team is not necessarily going to be a superior team. But what that intelligence and information that you get from gathering information on your opponents does for you, it can even out the playing field, or it can give you a slight advantage. And for today's NFL, where the league is built around parity through the draft and through the salary cap, it's very, so many games are just determined by 7 points or less nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so having a little bit of an edge through intelligence gathering is it's a big deal, especially nowadays, even more so than in the past.
That's a great point, because really, honestly, and the NFL kind of planned for this for the past decade, where they've got the majority of the league now. Really, they're all around 500. Like, most of them are 7-10, 8-9, that kind of thing. Then you're gonna have a handful of teams above that, double-digit wins, and a handful of teams below that, there's bottom of the barrel. But the majority of the league is like right there. So to have something like that in your back pocket, I'm not advocating that teams should go out and cheat, but to have something like that in your back pocket, I could see that being an advantage between having an 8-win team and a 10-win team, or something along those facts. Like, the little things would definitely matter. Got to get you out of here, Kevin Bryant, author of Spies on the Sidelines, the high stakes of NFL espionage. Real quick before you out of here, though, Super Bowl, Eagles, Chiefs. Who you got?
I'm gonna go Eagles. I just think they're the better all-around team. Having said that, I think the Chiefs have the X factors, which Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Those guys have been there. They've done it. I think Andy Reid is a mastermind. I think he's one of those top 5 coaches in the NFL today. And Patrick Mahomes is just, he's one of those, he's like an Elway or Dan Marino. He can just pull out those games and get the wins by himself, where it looks hopeless. He did that in the playoffs with against the Bills last year. And, he's hurt. He's a bit banged up. And so I've got to give the edge to the Eagles. But that's how I see it.
Definitely go and check out the new book, Spies on the Sidelines, The High Stakes of NFL Espionage, by author Kevin Bryant. If you want to try to win a free digital copy, again, go to the Tobacco Road Sports Radio Facebook page. The pin post at the very top of the page is our Guess the Number game. All you have to do is like the Tobacco Road Sports Radio Facebook page, go onto that post and guess the number. We've already pre-picked a number between 1 and 600. Each post you do, select a number. You can do one per day between now and Friday, February the 17th. We'll announce the winner on the Rundown with Desmond Johnson Saturday morning, February 18th, live on WWBG 1470 AM, and you'll receive your digital copy of the book. Kev, thanks for coming on, man. We really appreciate having you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Coming up, David Glenn in his bi-weekly appearance on Franchise Players. He'll join us in the Sports Buffet. We got a lot to talk about. NBA trades went down this week. We got ACC hoops, the Super Bowl's here, all kinds of stuff. We'll dive in with David and pull up a chair at the Sports Buffet right after this. You listen to Franchise Players on WWBG 1470 AM, WTOB 980 AM, and WCOG 1320 AM.
Franchise players are often referred to as the face of the franchise.
Welcome back to Franchise Players here at WWBG 1470 AM, WTOB 980 AM, 96.7 FM in Forsyth County, and WCOG 1320 AM out in Guilford County. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson. We're here with you every Friday throughout the Triad on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. Joining us every other week, bi-weekly now. He is an award-winning columnist, sports talk host, professor, lawyer. He's done it all. David Glenn joining us here from ChapelBoro.com. What's going on, DG? How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Des. It's always fun to be with you.
So I had to bring you back on to do Sports Buffet. I know I had you on week before last, and I got a prediction from you for the Super Bowl. We're going to wait a little bit at the end of this. Not a prediction on the game, because you're an Eagles fan, so I already know which way you're going on that. But I want to get some not prop bets, but inside the game. I want to get some opinion from you on that. But I got to talk to you about ACC hoops. I consider you one of the experts in ACC hoops, and I know I'm a gigantic North Carolina Tar Heels fan. What in the world is going on with my Tar Heels? I actually had a high school basketball game when they played Wake Tuesday night, so I got home and watched the replay on ESPN Plus after I already knew the score, and I was like, well, let me watch it anyway. Let me see how they came back or whatever, to see if there was any fight. And I watched the first half of that game, specifically watching the backcourt, RJ Davis and Caleb Love. I counted one pass between the two of them for like the first 15 minutes of the game. And I noticed that they are always on opposite sides of the court. Like, no matter what, I don't know if it's by coincidence or if that's by design or whatever, but if one of them has the ball, the other one's way over in the corner someplace, or they're both on opposite ends. So like they don't have to pass it to each other. I know there was some rumors then when you were going around regarding Caleb Love and RJ Davis. I literally just sat down and saw a tweet from Caleb Love basically saying that, they're laughing at all this and everything. It was a picture of him and RJ Davis, and he tagged him in it. So I don't think any of that stuff's actually what's really going on. But just X's and O's wise, what are you seeing from these Tar Heels that gives you a little bit of concern? And what are you seeing that gives you a little bit of hope for the stretch run? They're in the same spot they're in last year.
Yeah, I'll start at the back and then work my way back to the front. The bottom line to me is that after Virginia, Carolina is still among the ACC teams that has the highest ceilings. And I know where the Tar Heels are in the standings. They are in a very middling, mediocre place right in the middle of the pack. And this has been another roller coaster season for Carolina. Their defense was not very good early. And actually, since conference play started, I know how bad the defense was against Wake Forest, but since conference play started, the Tar Heels actually have become a mediocre offensive team. And it doesn't make sense when you think that 4 starters are back from that same team that made that magical run to the NCAA title game. And it doesn't make sense when you consider that last year at Northwestern, Pete Nance was a good 3-point shooter. Last year at Carolina, Caleb Love was a pretty good 3-point shooter. Last year at Carolina, RJ Davis was a pretty good 3-point shooter. Now, we all know Brady Manick is gone, and he was a sensational 3-point shooter. But it's not as if Pete Nance, RJ Davis, and Caleb Love have never been able to hit threes. It is unusual to go from being good at something at the college level, and then as you get older, somehow that skill disappears. Right. Pete Nance, RJ has been better lately since his hand healed. But Pete Nance hit 40-something% from long range at Northwestern, leading to speculation that he might fit quite nicely into the Brady Manick role. He has not clicked with this particular starting lineup. And Caleb Love, as you and I have discussed in the past, is the most unpredictable player in the Atlantic Coast Conference, period. And he is about as volatile and erratic and hard to understand and hard to predict, I believe, as any important player in Carolina history. If you're that up and down, you're usually not a starter playing 35 minutes a game. Caleb is, and Hubert Davis has given him that incredibly long leash. And yet too many times, Caleb takes unwise shots with horrendous shot selection. He doesn't create many easy opportunities for his teammates. That's one reason that whatever RJ and Caleb are personality-wise, and I'm not going to claim to tell you what's going on in their friendship or whatever, basketball-wise, they're not good fits for each other. That's just the bottom line statistically, not even my opinion. But with Caleb, it's bad defense and poor decision-making and bad shot selection. And if you're making 28 or 29% of your threes, you're not supposed to take far more threes than everybody else on the team. And so the Heels are the worst three-point shooting team in conference play right now, under 30%. And that doesn't work in modern college basketball when your opponent is going 3+3+3 sometimes. And, you have to feed Armando Bacot and try to go 2+2+2 and get to the free throw line as much as possible.
I almost feel like it's because Hubert was a shooter when he was a player. And there's something inside of him that's reluctant to tell them to stop shooting, that he lives by the creed of, well, if you're a shooter, you got to shoot to get out of a slump. So be it. If Caleb's got to shoot 11 3-pointers or whatever to get out of this slump, we got to live with it because I'm going to play him 35 minutes. So I don't have anyone else to play that amount of time, on this thing. Although I guess, well, no, not really. I mean, because in that weight game itself, perfect example, ice cold, the entire game, last 4 minutes, he hits like 3 30-foot 3-pointers to get this thing down to like 5 or whatever it is, right, and make it look a little bit better on paper. But that's the maddening thing about it. And our buddy Josh Graham, I talked to him about it. He actually mentioned it on his show a month or two back. And I know you were on his show this past week, and I think he mentioned it again, where reluctantly I agreed with him that he's our Austin Rivers. He literally is our Austin Rivers. He literally is Austin Rivers. Like, I remember talking to Duke fans at the time when Austin Rivers was there, and they were almost like, they love him because he hit that shot on that top-ranked Carolina team.
Right.
that in that game. Duke didn't lead the entire game until Rivers hit that shot. But that's also the same Duke team that lost in Greensboro first round of the NCAA tournament, one of Duke's 3 first-round losses or whatever under K. So they kind of have a love-hate relationship with him. You don't really see a lot of people with Austin Rivers Duke t-shirts running around, and I feel like it's going to be the same way with Caleb Love when this is all said and done, unless something happens here in the next couple of weeks. And I think it's foolish for us to assume they can go on the same run they did last year. A lot of stuff had to happen for that to go down, but they do have basically the same team. And honestly, I think if Caleb just starts driving and trying to get to the foul line, it fixes a whole lot of this. Like, it's just no assist, no passing. Everyone's standing around. It's like a dribble, shoot. I think we're dead last or 12th in assist or something like that in the ACC, which is weird for a Carolina team. So we'll see what they can do. They've got Clemson Saturday at the Dean Dome, so that's always fun. Duke fell to Miami 81-59 earlier this week after beating Carolina this past weekend. Duke is horrific on the road this year. How much do you trust this Duke team in the postseason? Because it feels like Virginia, Miami are locks to get in the tournament. Duke seems like they're on the right side of the fence, but a loss or two here could put them right on top of the fence again. And I believe they've got Virginia at Virginia, if I'm not mistaken, on Saturday, which is always a hard place to play. Give me your thoughts on this Duke team.
Yeah, the bottom line with the Blue Devils is, at a time when college basketball is about as old as it has ever been, thanks to the transfer portal and redshirt years. And remember, everybody got the free COVID year. So Pitt, for example, has 2 24-year-olds in its starting lineup. College basketball is old. So if you happen to be one of the few, there are only 2 ACC teams relying heavily on freshmen this season. One is Syracuse, where they had to do it out of necessity, and they're just kind of middle of the pack, probably not an NCAA tournament team. And the other is Duke. And although I think Duke brought in 5 of the 6 highest ranked prep All-Americans among the whole ACC, 5 of the top 6 were Blue Devils. Only Kyle Filipowski has lived up to his high school hype.
Yeah.
Filipowski's going to be first team All-ACC. Filipowski's going to be the ACC Freshman of the Year, deservedly so.
I agree.
Those other guys have taken longer. And one thing that often happens when 18-year-olds and other freshmen play against 23 and 24-year-olds away from Cameron Indoor Stadium, they look nervous. It is not an exaggeration to say that the Blue Devils figuratively had their knees knocking when they lost by 24 at NC State.
Oh, yeah.
That was not the Wolfpack dissecting them with some basketball X's and O's. That was the Blue Devils folding in a hostile environment the way many college freshmen do. No matter how crazy your high school road games were, it was not the same as most ACC road games. And the same thing just happened at Miami. Duke was good enough to beat Carolina in Cameron, and you asked them to play the Hurricanes in South Florida. They had their heads handed to them. That was not just a loss. Now, that's happened multiple times for the Blue Devils on the road. I wouldn't be surprised if they get spanked in Charlottesville as well.
Yeah.
But because of the talent, Roach is a good veteran at point guard. Filipowski's a very hard guy to defend in a double-double machine. I still think the Blue Devils are among those top 4 teams in terms of their potential. No disrespect to Clemson and Pitt. If one of those 2 teams finishes first, either Brad Brenna or Jeff Capel is going to be the ACC Coach of the Year and deserve
Agreed.
it.
Yeah.
But in terms of how far can they go in the big bracket, I still think it starts with UVA, continues with Miami, and then the 2 schools we've been talking about for decades, Duke and Carolina, still have some time to put things together. Carolina for the chemistry reasons we discussed earlier. Duke because freshmen tend to be less nervous by March of their, some coaches will say, well, he's not a freshman anymore, right? Mm-hmm. If you've been playing enough minutes over the last 4 months, at some point, you're not going to be as nervous on the road. The Blue Devils need that corner to be turned if John Shire's rookie year as the head coach of the Blue Devils is going to have a happy ending.
It's going to be hilarious if we're sitting here, me and you talking end of March, discussing UNC versus Duke Final Four Part 2 and the path that both teams took to get there. Because again, we talked about this the last time you were on a couple of weeks ago. College basketball in general just feels wide open. And maybe it's because of the age thing with people staying an extra year because of the COVID year and people not going early and things of that sort. It feels like 2019 was the peak. So up to this point of college basketball where we had like stars, like first round, you knew they were first round pick or you knew they were one and done the moment they stepped foot on campus. I can't really pick those guys out. The kid at Alabama is really good. The freshman, Brandon, I can't remember his last name. He's really good. Who else? There's a couple, but then like the guys like the Derek Lively the second, that were ranked like number 2 in the class or whatever. I can't even imagine him leaving early. Like it doesn't feel like he's ready to leave early, but he'll probably try. So it's stuff like, I don't know, it's just different nowadays than it was just 3-4 years ago in terms of the star level in college basketball. And I don't know when that comes back. I guess all it takes is just a really highly ranked freshman class, but it's kind of flipped back old school to the way it used to be. And I think it's jarring people who got used to the one and done, getting to know a kid for 8 months and then having to learn a new kid in 8 months and go from there. Now you're seeing Armando Baycots and Jeremy Roach's staying a couple years and that kind of thing. So rapid fire real quick. We're in the sports buffet with David Glenn here on Franchise Players. LeBron James surpassed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar this week as the NBA's all-time leading scorer. Where do you rank LeBron on your list of all-time favorites?
Favorites in terms of the greatest of all time, or favorites just personally?
Greatest of all time.
Greatest of all time, I still start with Michael Jordan. I continue with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Pretty cool to see Kareem kind of literally and figuratively kind of hand the baton, so to speak, to LeBron on that record-setting night. And I do have LeBron next. So in the hypothetical all-time greatest starting five in pro basketball history, I think LeBron is in that top five, and number 3 with still games to play. Michael and Kareem can't add to their totals.
Yeah.
LeBron still can, but I know he has his critics. I've been around long enough that I interviewed him as a high school player, so I am both personally a fan of his and just trying to be objective. I do think he's one of the greatest players in NBA history.
I agree. I'm a LeBron fan. I followed him every team he's gone to, Cleveland, Miami, Cleveland. I'm a Laker fan. It happened since I was a child. So the 80s Lakers Celtics stuff. So when he went to LA finally, I was like, yes. But I have him 5th on mine, mainly because I can't put my first 2 are the same as yours, Jordan, Kareem. But at the moment, as we stand right here in February 2023, even though he has the record, I can't put him above Magic and I can't put him above Kobe yet. I feel like if he gets a 5th ring to match where they are, then in my mind, it makes sense. I can catapult him ahead because of the rest of his resume. But
I get it. Magic's in my top 5 as well. Yeah. I get it.
And those guys changed like the way we watched basketball. Kobe might be the greatest Laker of all time. How can I put LeBron over him? Or Magic might be the greatest Laker of all time. He's pretty much considered the greatest Laker of all time. How can I rank LeBron over him? Unless LeBron can get more than 1 ring in a Laker uniform. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen this year. I know they just traded the whole roster away to try to fix stuff, and they've only got like 30 games left in the season, but we'll see. Real quick, David Glenn with us here on Franchise Players. Super Bowl, your Eagles are in it against the Kansas City Chiefs. If Pat Mahomes wins a ring, which would be his 2nd in 4 years, I think, does he have a legit argument to be included in the GOAT conversations there in terms of greatest of all time quarterbacks in such a short period of time?
No, I wouldn't go there yet. He's too young and has too many years to play. We'll see what his body of work looks like at the end, but he's certainly the key to that game. To me, if you boiled down Eagles Chiefs, it's the Eagles have an amazing pass rush, and if Mahomes turns into Houdini, as he sometimes does, and makes those scramble plays, which have hurt the Eagles this season, despite their great defense overall, that is the path for Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes, and the Chiefs to win that game. That is the path right there. So he'd be adding to his legend, and he's fun to watch, and I believe going to end up in that GOAT conversation. I'm just not ready to give him that label yet. Now that he's still in his late 20s.
So we had Kevin Bryant on right before you, the author of Spies on the Sidelines, the high stakes world of NFL espionage, where he basically got a chance to detail a lot of stuff like Spygate and things like that. I've been grappling with this since Brady announced his retirement last week before. in terms of where to put him, because everyone's just automatically giving him GOAT status because he owns all the records. He played for 20 years. It's kind of the same thing as LeBron James to me. So I'm looking at, like, if I can't put LeBron at number one, even though he's played for so long, he's going to own the record book. Why am I putting Tom Brady at one? Now, Brady's different because Brady actually has hardware too. He's got rings. He's got more rings than anybody on earth. He's got
a lot of them.
Yeah. So it's a little bit harder to do it with Tom. But then I came down to this question. We asked it on Rundown Saturday, and I wanted to ask your opinion on this. There's 2 minutes left in the game. Down by 4. I'm going to get you out of here on this one. Down by 4. The ball's on your own 20-yard line. You got to go 80 yards to score in the Super Bowl to win. Who do you want at quarterback? Tom Brady or Joe Montana?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's why I'm stuck with the Tom Brady question, because I'm like,
Yeah, I think you can't lose picking between those two. That's for sure.
Let's start right there. Yeah.
I think I have to go with Brady because he has even more hardware. I've seen him do it under a lot of different circumstances, with the great wide receiver, with the great tight end, with good running backs, without good running backs, with a great offensive line, with a middling offensive line. I'm not betting against either one of those guys, but I think I've just seen Brady do it so often, maybe even more often than Montana, that I'll break the tie in favor of TB12. But I'm not going to be disappointed to see either one of those two.
Come on, Joe. I guess we got to put you out there. Yeah. It's crazy too, because to me, it's the LeBron Jordan argument. Because if you're on the Jordan side, you're using the eyeball test. You're using, well, he was flawless in the finals, all these things. If you're a LeBron fan, it's probably because you grew up with LeBron being your Jordan, like it's your generation. So it's hard for you to see someone that you never saw better than what you're watching right now. I kind of look at it like that. For me, I saw them both. Montana was like that in terms of not turning the ball over in any of these Super Bowls, undefeated in all these Super Bowls, MVPs, yada, yada, yada. He just didn't play 20 years. Tom did. Right. So it's an interesting question. I like asking people their opinions on it because it does make them pause. Every time I ask, it's like no one's really thought about comparing them. And I feel like Montana's getting faded out, and he really should not. Shout out to Terry Bradshaw, too. We never talk about Terry Bradshaw for some reason. Like,
what's fascinating is neither of those guys makes defenses nervous with their legs.
Yeah.
So you have to be so darn smart, so darn accurate, so good pre-snap, so good with your reads post-snap. Obviously, you need some help from your teammates, but those guys, you are talking about, almost a robotic level of genius execution at the quarterback position from both of them. And yeah, maybe the tie goes to Brady because he did it even longer. And, he did it way into his 40s while eating avocado ice cream. I mean, he's a freak of nature, even beyond some of the other greats at that position or the other greats at any position in the NFL. So that adds to his legacy, as does that hardware that you mentioned. It's hard to get that many Super Bowls.
Yeah, it's hard. With 7, like people were already sitting there talking about, well, maybe Pat Mahomes can do it. I'm like, well, he's got to get to 7 first. Like, that's not exactly the easiest thing, although this will be his, 3rd that he's been to in 4 years or something nuts. So if anybody can try, maybe it's Pat Mahomes. You can read his work at chapelboro.com. Follow him at Twitter at David Glenn Show. DG, we'll see you week after next.
Always fun, Des. Great to be with you. Keep up the good work.
Coming up, more from franchise players here on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com.